Welcome back. So it's Alan, and I'm chronicling and I'm looking back at my so-called Gen X life. Gonna go way back, and I've got my coffee, guys. I've got my coffee, which I've got a coffee machine, but I need to get a proper coffee machine, one of those barista ones. But yeah, they're the price of a kidney. The first stage of this is where I think the foundation of what it is. Those of us who are Gen X, I think no matter where you were, it has to have what you think is a pivotal moment, a starting point, where things begin to get embedded. And for me, it starts in 1970 through to 79. So when I was 5 till I was 14. Why? What was happening in the UK? So 70 to 74, I really start to remember it about 73, 74, some memories. And that was during Edward Heath, Ted Heath, Prime Minister, Conservative government. And there was union strikes. There was inflation that was literally running at 24, 25%. Wages and strikes and minor strikes. He tried to create some law that backfired. I remember in that period, and you can help me out here, guys, everything was just bare bones. My dad was working, so that was cool. But everything around was like, there was 7 of us in the house. Yeah, so everything was bare bones. Everything. You know, you went out to play with no money, not because your parents my mum didn't want to give us any money. There just was no money. Everything just being eaten by her 7 seagulls who wanted feeding all the time. And when I got to about, I guess, 1973, I remember my soccer team, my football team had won the FA Cup. My dad was home, my granddad was in the suit and he was still alive, and I got some, what the sweets were called monkey nuts, but they were just glazed in the shape of a peanut, the monkey nut peanut, and there was bars cream soda. My dad, it was a big day, the FA Cup final, but it was just I remember everything was so tough, everything was so tight, literally there was no excess. And then 75, we got Callaghan was Prime Minister to 79. And this is where things got worse again. This is what they call 78, 79 is what the UK history calls the winter of discontent. And that was, remember, we'd had the 3-day strikes and now this was kicking on again. Yeah, this was a Labour government this time because they're all as bad as each other. Again, inflation got as high as 17%, but it was averaging about 9%. We've just been in a world crisis with 8%, but this is 77, 78, 79. We had inflation periods of, 17%, mass unemployment, over 2 million. There was power cuts, things were getting cut off, everything. The unions, good or bad or indifferent, whatever you think about them, were driving the country into the ground in a battle with the government. And also at the same time, I'd gone through things, these are the things I click on to remember. He's had like Jaws the movie, Star Wars. I remember sneaking into the pictures. I think it was see Romero's Dawn of the Dead. There was an X. You had X movies. Not porn, but X. An X-rated killed your film, but it was on in the cinema. So all that time, and I was 13 and I was growing up. Do you remember this, guys? We'd had the summer of 76. That was the heat wave. It was monumental, something like 80 days of ridiculous high temperatures. So from 74 to 79, apart from the biological changes, because I was a hobbit, but I was still growing up, everything was in chaos. Minor strikes, 2 different governments, inflation, mass unemployment, 2 of my brothers leaving home. It was just such turmoil. Everything. And I've talked about other videos where we got on Atari. So yeah, there was these glimpses into great life where you had that moment. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? As when you're more appreciative of the things you get. And I don't mean I was never loved. I don't remember ever being starved and going without meals or anything like that, guys. But I remember having no power. I remember having bailiffs at the door because my mum couldn't afford the bills. No disrespect to my mum, but when you couldn't pay your power bill then, they came to the door and cut you off, took your meter out and you had no electric. That was in the 70s. literally cut you off and that was it. Get on with it, kids or not. Yeah, I think if you had a kid under 1 year old, they couldn't. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe they could just cut you off. So there was less. There was less victimology. You would just, the circumstances occurred, you had to get on with it. And I think that as you're a teenager, girl or boy, that begins to get ingrained into your personality, that resilience, that expectations that things can be shit at any given moment. And that when you're having those moments which are good, you latch onto them, you enjoy them, you treasure them, but you don't take them for granted. Then you move on to the next shit moment, up and down, the resilience. But all the way through, I don't remember anyone saying, oh, we can just stop. We don't have to worry about it. You know, we can just call ourselves victims and everyone will give us the boohoo on TikTok. So you had 74, Heath, country in disarray, 3-day strikes, oil OPEC crisis. 74, 75, 79, you had James Callaghan, complete disaster. So 2 disastrous governments, country in stagnation. I'm trying to grow up. And then I'm thinking, okay, when I'm 77, by 79, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? Because in the next 2 years, I'm leaving home. So I'm beginning to think what my destination is. And we'll talk about how the process goes. But in the middle of all that, you had Star Wars, Jaws, The Clash, Deborah Harry. You had all those fluctual changes, the punk movement, God Save the Queen being banned on Radio 1. We had censorship then. Mainstream media lied about things then, just as it did now. But I don't remember giving a shit. I don't remember having a mental health crisis at 14 because I wasn't getting what I wanted. I just remember thinking, what can I do next? Where are my mates? How can we play out? How can I eat all the food? I think I've told this. I'm not sure I told this. Mum used to have to do dinners in 2 sittings because if she had the older ones sat with us, they'd be taking our food off the plate just to bully us. Not all of it. They weren't cruel. But if you weren't quick, it was gone. So yeah, literally, it was literally like, it was Lord of the Flies in the kitchen. I promise you. You'll hear me. If you've got a large family or you're in a UK school and you're playing with your mates, you know how quickly things could devolve. So I think that is the basis. And we'll talk about in other videos when I'm having some fun about what I was watching my parents do, how I was watching my older brothers and sisters plough forward and setting examples. And the resilience of seeing everything being so shit and so good and then so shit and the whole nation struggling. Out from the northeast, shipbuilding was going. Mining was about to get crushed by Maggie in 79 onwards. Unions were about to get flatlined. So it was all building up. But at the same time, I've had to really deeply think about this to remember it because it's like I didn't care. I had to get on and do other stuff. I was kind of enjoying school. I was playing football. I was doing all different things and we'll talk about it. But I think that's where the Gen X comes from. It wasn't that people aren't having tough times now. It's that my parents were post-war family. Yeah. My mum had been moved to Coventry. His dad had gone off to sail. He was out on the ocean liners and everything. So it was just that double 2 or 3 generations of complete resilience. And their kids were like, okay, nobody's squawking. Nobody's asking to, whatever it is, I've just got to get on with it. I think that's where the Gen X comes from. I think it's just incidental that somebody plucked the word Gen X out of a book and decided that's what we'd become. I don't see myself as Gen X. I just think it's easier to talk about as a frame of reference. You give it a label, you can attract funding. Guys, tell me your stories in the comments. Both sides of the Atlantic, wherever you're from in the world. I know this applies a lot to the UK, but I know the America would have had all of its significant struggles at different times. I know there's pre-Giuliani New York, and there's everything all over the place, and post-civil rights, post-Vietnam. So we'll have all seen different types of resilience having to be developed. I can just give you my perspective. Till the next one. Take care.